Welcome, modern day mystics, fellow truth seekers, James and Justin back again, and we have another great guest with us today. We have Zhi wei Zheng from the Moments with Z YouTube channel. He deals with mental health and personal development. So I'm looking forward to this. Hopefully he can help us out, help you guys out there, the viewers, and without further ado, let's begin. Z, so good to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us. We've been watching the content on your YouTube channel. Really great stuff dealing with mental health, personal development, and you have quite the journey. You've got a very fascinating story. I really enjoyed the episode on your ayahuasca experience. I was like, man, I got some questions for that. I want to know a bit about that. But your YouTube channel, maybe we should start kind of with your journey up to that point. And
Sure.
maybe you can incorporate the ayahuasca story in there and let us know how you kind of got into this field of personal development and mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And hmm, where do I begin? I was in a very, very rough, challenging headspace for many years. I want to say most of my late teens to early 20s. I was very depressed. I was very anxious. Um, I didn't know it at the time. It wasn't until I took ayahuasca that I was able to finally pinpoint it like, oh, wow, I am lacking a lot of purpose in my life. I don't have a deep connection with actually myself. I hated myself. I criticized myself incessantly in my own mind. And tracing back to it, a lot of it did stem from childhood, very overly critical environment. And I essentially just internalize a lot of the external voices that maybe adults, teachers, relatives may have projected onto me. And yeah, so that external voice became very internalized and carried that with me for a very long time. I Here's the thing about a lot of Chinese families. I'm Chinese. I'm also 29 years old, by the way. Just put that information out there. The Chinese family is we place a lot of emphasis on money, and much of that comes from the fact that just one or two generations ago, most of us were incredibly impoverished. So money was seen as like the main goal of it all, and the nugget of wisdom my dad gave me was like, do good in school, go to a good college, make money, and you're good. I have no reason to distrust him. I love my dad. I'm sure he loves me. So I went forward with that. And I that's how I got into the career of like computer science, but something was missing throughout that whole time. Um, Funny thing is I got into computer science literally because I searched up, hey, highest paying bachelor's degree. I'm trying to get like my highest bang for my buck. I think that's the phrase. I didn't want to go through a PhD on none of that stuff. So I did that. Um, Software developer for several years. But again, I was missing something. I didn't know what I was missing at the time. Now I know it was purpose. Now I know it was a good relationship with myself. But I just didn't have the vocabulary or the level of awareness and consciousness to see what was happening. It was like I was in my first person point of view of my life, of my thought process, that I couldn't see my own blind spots. Um, in retrospect, very obvious. Hey, where do you want to dedicate your life energy towards? Z? What is your purpose? And so I was in a very messed up headspace. I was very good at hiding it though. Friends, unless you're like literally my best friend, most people had no idea. I was very good at putting on a fake smile. Um, so I carried that with me for many years until I couldn't take it anymore. It's like, I cannot do this anymore. I don't think I could go on living if I keep being in this state. Um, and that's what drew me to ayahuasca. That's what drew me to going to Peru. Very challenging journey because I spent most of my life in America, never really traveled out of state. Um, Next thing you know, I'm in Peru working with a bunch of shamans. I didn't really believe in spirits at the time. Going through the school system, it's very much focused on material things, observable things, things that we can physically manipulate. So spirituality, spirits, the intangible, these were all concepts that I kind of like just written off. Um, but I knew for some reason that ayahuasca was going to help me. It was a feeling thing. It was not a logic, it was not a thinking thing. It was just a pure feeling type of thing. And so I went. And also, if at any time you want to like hop in with like any questions to clarify anything, by all means, I just realized I've been talking for a minute now.
No, it's cool. I'm the only thing I jump in and ask is like
Yeah.
you a lot. Usually, it's not someone's first jump like psychedelics. It's usually like maybe I should go see someone. Maybe I need to talk to someone.
Yeah.
How was it? Like, were you surfing online? Was it something you heard somewhere? Like, where did that come from?
Oh, okay. So that's a great question, actually, because oddly enough, I never really thought of seeking too much traditional therapy in terms of help. Because I'd imagine that was like for depression or like other mental health disorders. And like I said, at that point, I didn't have the vocabulary to describe what I was feeling. And ayahuasca wasn't actually my first foray into that realm of plant medicine, healing, psychedelics. My very, very first experience was actually MDMA. Uh, I was very straight edge as growing up. I actually waited until I was 21 to drink, just to give you an idea of how straight edge I was. And I think I was about like 22 when one of my friends, who was a big fan of electronic dance music, EDM, and he was like, "Hey, you want to go to this show?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" And he was like, "Would you like to take MDMA?" Now, I my I in the past, my knee-jerk reaction would just be like, "Oh no, drugs are bad," it's
Mm.
very two-dimensional with that. But for some reason, I was curious. I was very curious. Something about the way he said it, something I can't put my finger on it, but I was just very, very curious. And I did some research. It's relatively safe, done in certain dosages. So I was like, you know what? Let's do it. And when I did it, it was such a heart-opening experience. Ah, I think I was very closed off heart-wise to the world.
Mm.
And that experience just showed me that I have so much love to give, and there's so much love around me for me to receive. And I just felt in flow. There was a great exchange of love coming out of me, coming into me, between me and everybody around me. It was like a veil was lifted over my eyes. Like, wow, there's love everywhere. I just blocked myself from seeing it. I just blocked myself from giving it. I just blocked myself from receiving it as well. There's so much love. And immediately it was like that was, I guess I would say that would be my first spiritual experience. Like, wow, there's something here. There's something about this life experience that I've been missing this entire time. And that experience gave me a big glimpse behind the door of what I was missing. And ever since then, that's what got me interested in exploring psychedelics, psilocybin, LSD. Um, and the thing is, like, there's for sure the recreational side of it, but I was very much drawn to the personal development healing side of it.
Yeah.
Um, and very naturally, I think that research just led me to ayahuasca, and I was very drawn by it. For 2 years, I believe I was drawn to it. It just took 2 years to build up the courage to be like, all right, let's go to Peru, let's do this, let's make this happen.
Yeah. That's an amazing story, and it came through loud and clear that your interest was in the therapeutic aspects of it. It's kind of hard to talk about something like MDMA, right? But the fact is, I think sometimes compounds like that, they like open a door. It's and the weird thing about it is, I don't think that it's in the same category as like like I don't want to promote it. I'm trying to be careful here, but I think sometimes those things can open maybe your heart chakra or open some spiritual aspect, like the way you very eloquently put, like it showed you what love could be, and this is possible. I never even felt these feelings of love before, and all of a sudden you feel them, and there's sort of door opening. I don't know what the best way to go about that is, but you're just explaining what did happen, and it's not an unfamiliar story, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you go on to like develop a issue with that compound, right? But it's
Absolutely.
remarkable that it can do that sometimes.
Oh yeah. It's absolutely astounding. Like I said, I was a very straight edge person, so I didn't see it in that light. I only saw it as, oh, it's a drug, therefore it's
Mm-hmm.
bad. Stay away. And by no means am I promoting
Right.
this because this is not like a one size fit all solution for everybody. What worked for me may not work for other people. I simply wanted to like illustrate just how much it did for me.
Right.
And when it comes to these compounds, I do believe intention is very important.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of people go in with the intention of just having a good time, which is totally fine. I found in my experience that when I bring in the intention of like, show me something that I'm missing, for example, something as simple as that, or show me what love really is. Show
Yeah.
me how good life can truly be.
Yeah.
It allows these compounds to focus in on a particular aspect that it can then deliver a message. And yeah, the message that MDMA delivered for me was like, hey, love is all around, including within you. It's everything is love. We just got to get out of the way. Um, and
It has been used by professionals to help people with PTSD, like I'm pretty sure like war veterans and stuff like that. And they're
yes,
doing some work with psilocybin where in a controlled environment, it's like there's weeks of preparation prior and then a day where you meet with medical professionals to do it. I'm kind of pro that.
hmm
Which I don't want to be a wet blanket. I'm sure there's lots of people that don't get powers involved with it. But
hmm
I want to be careful about the dangerous side of some of these things too, right? You probably even recognize some of that with ayahuasca, which we're still on our way to. Yeah. Well, that's one thing I do want to like jump into because we got this platform here where we get to talk to people from all different types of walks of life. We have some very conservative people who watch our show. We have some very liberal people who watch our show. Different religions, faiths, beliefs, atheists, all type people who watch our stuff.
hmm
So as an experience as unique as yours, and which to mention, I was moved by it when I watched your ayahuasca. I was moved by it. Like, so maybe you could take us through like the journey there, like the journey to Peru, and kind of like how it all went down for those who have not heard the story.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Happy to share that. Um, Hmm. The funny thing is, I actually didn't plan too much beyond my Peru trip. I made sure I didn't make any big plans afterwards because I had a deep sense that this is going to be a profoundly life-changing experience. I didn't know how it was going to change my life, but I just knew something was dramatically going to change. And to help me with like alleviating some of the fear that I felt going into such a new and foreign experience, one of my closest childhood friends, her name is Hien, uh, we went together and we kind of serve as each other's like safety blanket in a sense, something familiar in such an unfamiliar space, and that genuinely helped a lot. There was three ceremonies that I participated in the span of a week, but the one that I shared online, the one that you saw, was my second one where I lost my mind, and it's I still struggle to bring it into words to help people really feel what it means to lose your mind. I took the medicine, and just so the viewers know, the entire setup, we're kind of in a wooden structure, circular structure, quite large, with about 20, 19 or so other participants who went there seeking some form of healing. Um, these participants range from someone who literally said, hey, this is my last resort. Like, if this didn't work, I was going to check out. Like I've made plans to check out. This didn't work. So it ranged from quite extreme cases like that to someone who is just, oh, I'm in Peru. Let's might as well take ayahuasca. Like literally, it was that casual for him. And me bringing that up is like every single one of us found healing, even the person that wasn't looking for healing, even the person that didn't realize they were hurt.
Oh,
We all found healing. Um, my personal experience when I finally took the medicine, um, it immediately I started hearing voices, and it's different in terms of communication to another human being, because when I'm talking to you two lovely people, I hear it through here. And if you were in person, your voice would be emanating towards me and I would hear it here. But in that experience, the voice was like 360 all around me, permeating throughout my entire body, and there was no room for misunderstanding. That was the one of the most surprising thing about that experience. I never had to ask them to clarify a single thing. I never had to say, hey, what did you mean? They just communicated in a way where I understood everything instantaneously. It was a combination of voices, imagery, and feeling. It's like using every single faculty to deliver a message. And the message, the very first message that came through is that you don't know how to use your mind, Z. In fact, most of the people where you come from, I've come to interpret that as the Western society, but potentially a more global phenomenon. But at the time, I interpret that as a Western society thing. Most of us weren't taught how to properly use our mind. Um, in fact, we tend to imagine scary futures and think about what ifs, and we try so hard to avoid all these multitude and in reality, infinite what ifs. And we just keep ourselves in a state of like subtle fear, subtle worry, subtle anxiety. I was in that state for a good chunk of my life. And the message showed me that that was the case. They like, hey, you don't know how to use your mind. You're constantly running into the future, being scared. Sometimes you run into the past and dwell into the past. You're running everywhere, but staying present, but being here right now. Right now is the only thing that's real, the present moment. I've shared this before, which was like the past can only exist in the form of memory, the future can only exist in the form of imagination. So in the present moment, they don't have any real substance, but we're the ones that give it power. We're the one that gives it this substance. We believe it's so real that it becomes visceral, and we can become so afraid of an imagined future. The thing that I eventually came to learn is that any of these imagined future, they all emanate from the present moment. So the key really is to be so present. And you'll realize that in the present moment, everything is fine. No matter what we're going through, it's going to be fine. Everything's going to change. If we have a difficult moment, it's going to pass. There's a flow to things that we have to accept. And acceptance was actually the key that got me out of the most challenging part of that ayahuasca experience, which I'll get into. When I lost my mind to try to communicate what that felt like, I could no longer communicate with anybody. In fact, I couldn't even communicate with my own body. My body was not listening to my commands. I was like flopping all over the place. I was very ungraceful, basically, making these faces. I was a complete mess. It took a long time for some facilitators to come through to check up on me. It felt like an eternity. When they checked up on me, they were like, Z, what's wrong? Like, what's going on? What's happening? I try to communicate that like I'm scared. Like I need help. Something is wrong, but nothing came out. It was just gibberish. And because there's no line of communication, there's nothing more to be said. They just had to let me go through my journey, um, so that I can experience what I need in order to heal. And I just started kept spiraling. My mind was gone. Everything was gone. There was nothing but fear and loneliness. I saw visions of myself in a mental institution. I truly felt what it meant to be mentally disabled to such a profound degree that no one understands me and I can't understand anybody else. It was such a deep sense of loneliness. I can't reach anyone. No one can reach me. The I guess the most heartbreaking part about that experience was seeing it break my mom's heart in my vision. I saw her just was completely destroyed, and yet she still continued to visit me in the hospital over repeatedly. In my vision, I kept seeing that her love was like just unceasing. And that was something that was incredibly beautiful. In the moments, it was hard for me to see that. All I saw was just people disappearing in my life. All I felt was just this deep, deep loneliness. And I thought, as I continue in this state, more and more people are going to continue to exit out of my life because I was no longer giving them anything. I was no longer in our relationship. I feel like this is some form of exchange. I give them good company, or perhaps I do things for them and vice versa. But if I'm in this out of mind state, there's no longer anything of value I can offer them. And now they're just going to leave me. And I was incredibly torn and saddened by that realization. And so I dwelled in that space of loneliness for what felt like eternity. For anybody who have gone through some intense ayahuasca or psychedelic experiences, it's not uncommon for people to lose their sense of time, right? It just becomes infinite. So I was in that infinite space with my loneliness. And to add on top of that, there was all the echoes of my previous thought patterns of, hey, Z, you're not good enough. You're ugly. No one's going to love you. You're a joke. All these echoes of my previous thought pattern just echoing around in my head as I've lost my mind. So on multiple layers, it was just my very own personal hell that I've described it as. And that's when I thought, I I can't do this. I've messed up big time, but there's no exit. The only exit that I know of is death, right? So I self-harmed. I really saw I wanted to end it. Like to me, nothing was better than that level of suffering, that level of loneliness, that level of alienation. I thought I'm going to end it. I started banging my head on the floor, just making a huge ruckus. Um, Thankfully for the angels that were all the facilitators present, they made sure that I didn't go through. I couldn't go through. If they tied me up, hog hog tied me up. Yeah. And they had three grown Peruvian men just like hold me down. And that was even worse because at this point I think it's also important that my intention going in um was to be free. I didn't even know what that
Mm.
meant, but I just know I wanted to be free because I didn't feel free.
Yeah.
And technically, on the surface, I was free. I can, drive around, do whatever before going on ayahuasca. It was the restriction of the mind, right? My mind wasn't free. I kept going into these thought loops, these thought patterns. It was it was the prison of the mind that I was in. And that's why I felt so unfree. But it was because it was my mind is so pervasive that I can't put my finger on what is actually going on. Um, so yeah, I went there to seek freedom. And then now I'm hogtied. I have three men pinning me down, restricting literally my freedom to the most extreme degree as possible. And I just kept fighting it. I kept fighting them. I kept fighting my mind. I kept fighting myself. I kept resisting everything for what felt like eternity. I even asked the facilitator, like, at least I'd imagined myself asking the facilitator. I'd imagine it came out just as gibberish again. I was like, can you end it for me? Like, just, knock me out or like do something to end my experience, like mercy kill almost. But
Mm.
of course, thankfully, they didn't go through with that. And I was just left in that space for a very, very long time. Ceremony was about 6 to 8 hours. I think it wasn't until on like hour seven that I finally found my liberation. And how I found my liberation, as I mentioned earlier, was this concept of acceptance. I I was fighting the whole way through. So now there's only one thing left to do, which is just to let go, to just accept this is what it is. What's happening is what's happening. There's nothing more to it. This is what's happening. And it was like a deep exhale of This is it. Just let go. And as I let go, the chatter in my mind finally stopped. Everything finally stopped. I was finally at peace. And I saw everything. Like everything was perfect. There was nothing, there was nothing wrong in the world. Everything may seem imperfect when we zoom in on the minute details of our life, but in the grand scheme of things, everything was so perfect. And I finally felt at peace. And that peace is something that I tune into throughout my life. Whenever I'm going through something, that peace is something I share with people who are also going through something, who are seeking some form of comfort or help. Whenever I work with people, I give them that peace. I share my peace because I don't lose it. It's not something that, like, if I give it away, I have less of it. It's just like an infinite thing. And we all have that. We all can tune into that peace. And that is the long and short of it, of my life-changing ayahuasca experience.
Very harrowing and amazing. There's a few things I wanted to point out and say, if that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely.
It seems like sometimes we have many of the similar journeys and issues we need to tackle. And one way of doing it is over time. You know, sometimes over the course of a lifetime, it might take someone to get free. You know, there's some people that you've maybe inspired to look into this and do something similar to you, but there are some people that are like, I'm never going near that stuff. That sounds like hell. And there's people that have done it, that have come out and been healed, and some people that have come out and said, thank God my ego's back. Screw that. I never want to do that to poor me again. And then they're taking the long path. I'm just noting that it seems like there's two ways of doing it. And for severe cases, sometimes it's like, let's get this done now. I've got too much work as a light worker, a good person to do in the world. Let's get this dealt with lickety split. And the way you do come off is free. Your videos are moving. I think it's awesome that you can cry on camera and be comfortable with that. That's the sign of somebody free, in my opinion. And what I wanted to say about that is when you before you had that experience and you came out changed and free and open and able to help people, I think you correctly identified the fact that I was projected all these things onto me. I think that we got these ideas and concepts projected onto us either consciously or subconsciously that we're no good, we're ugly, we're useless, all this stuff. I think there's so much of that goes on, and you can't even identify what the problem is because it's gotten in there so many different ways. And I'm a huge advocate of realizing it is projected in there. Sometimes it's projected in there through just like, well, I don't look like the superstar. I'm not like that person everybody agrees is awesome. So by contrast, I must suck. And I feel like breaking free from that conditioning and developing your own peace with yourself and your own autonomy and being okay with, I don't care what everybody, like I literally don't care if people think of me this way because I know that I have this degree of self-acceptance. I think that that's a good thing, and I hope that goes around, that attitude. That's all I wanted to say.
Oh, absolutely.
It seems like a very true, like an accelerated form of true surrender. And I can't state that enough because it's easy to talk about it like, oh, surrendering, or accepting. But it seems like that's the experience that happened. There was like to as much of a degree as can happen. It's like and it's like compounded therapy, like what would typically take someone 10 years or 20 years to do, happening in 7 hours, being squashed into there and then having this surrender experience. Because, like, to be honest, that's like something like I deal with, surrendering like your control, and your will and your ideas of what you were talking about with projection and stuff like that. Is surrender a proper term? Is that?
I would say so. Surrender, letting go. It's for a lot of people, it's like a very foreign thing because the number one question asked is like, well, how do you do that? Like, how do you surrender? How do you just let go? And that's a very challenging question to
stop hanging on.
Yeah, exactly.
You stop hanging on.
It's so simple, and yet we make it overly complex because we want to know how. And this is the one few part that I think Nike got it right. Like literally just do it. It's if I'm holding this ball and someone tells me let go, I'm not thinking how. It's just something I know how to do. You just do
Dude,
it.
before I had the words for it, I remember I was struggling. I was talking to my older brother, my other older brother,
Yeah.
and I said, "There's something powerful about the image of a hand grasping and then a hand open." And I didn't even know what I was trying to say. We were philosophizing one night, and I was just, look at the difference, like I'm tightly grabbing, and then like there's a difference just in the imagery alone, right?
Yeah.
And I don't mean to confuse anyone, It's like, would you say the reluctancy of the surrender has come from the PTSD, the trauma of, like you said, people grow up and they're not taught how to use their minds correctly. They're told how to think. They're told how to be.
Yep.
They have all this stuff thrown onto them.
Yeah.
And so no wonder it's so hard to surrender that,
Yeah.
because you don't even know that you're supposed to be surrendering that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Sometimes the people that are loose and free, like, it's so funny. I think you can pull truth from anywhere, even something as stupid as Seinfeld. Like I was like binge watching it, and I was like, Kramer's the smartest one out of all of them, and they all make fun of him behind his back. They all give him a hard time, but he's got the life they all want. You know what I mean? George even at one point says, like, because Kramer's at fantasy camp, and George is like, people should pay to go to live in his life. His life is a fantasy camp.
Yeah.
And I realize he doesn't let it get you down that people make fun of him behind his back because he's just doing his thing, and he gets invited to all the same stuff they go to. So, and I think even this dawned on me at one point, when I was in a phase where I was struggling with social anxiety. It's like, if I've got social anxiety, but I'm at the thing. It would be one thing if there was no one to be socially anxious around, but I'm there too.
Yeah.
If people aren't physically hitting me, then just let go. Just let
Yeah.
go and let people have the right to judge you if they want. Some people are trying really hard and just need a pat on the back and some acknowledgement, like, check out how awesome my clothes are. Check out how hard I'm working. Check out all the ways I'm trying to be better than you. It's like, give the baby his bottle and be like, yeah, you're better than me. You're probably better than me. I know that might sound crazy, but it's meant to shake loose the idea of having to be a certain way that's like not authentic to who you are.
Yeah. I think you nailed it there. Having to be in a way that is not authentic to who you are. Because a big part of my life was people telling me who I am.
Yeah.
They were telling me that, hey, you're too sensitive, you're too this, you're too that. And it really instilled a sense of me as if like I wasn't enough as I am. And I lost my identity. I thought I should be this way to appease this person. Now I got to be this other way to appease this other person. And I had it completely flipped. I was looking externally on how I should be, but I'm really meant to look inward, discover who I am, know who I am, and show the world who I am. It's not up to the world to tell me who I am. It's for me to know and for me to express that unto the world. And it was that reversal that really put me in just a very challenging and heartbreaking and depressing headspace. I genuinely believe a lot of people. Worst?
The worst,
Yeah.
like hell.
Literally my own personal hell. So yeah, absolutely. I completely resonate with what you were saying there. It's just not ever since then, it was about a journey of discovering who I am again, being that person to my fullest, and then allowing
tolerating the goodness. Sometimes I think we need to grow an ability to tolerate love. Like, I don't know if you know who Duncan Trussell is. Do you know who that is?
Yeah.
He's got a great clip where he's talking about, this is a super paraphrase, but it's essentially the idea of your heart opening up and getting in touch with something that's long been buried, and the like love and maybe the heart chakra, I'm not sure. And he said it was when he first started getting a sense of this, it felt sort of like heartbreak, felt sort of like sadness. And I think people can get a little frightened when their consciousness starts to grow, or they start to get in touch with some humanity they buried. Like, I lived my life because this is where I was raised, man. This was the culture I grew up in, was nothing but competition and passive aggression and, just competing with my siblings, hating my parents, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, a sort of tenderness starts to grow in you, and you start to have compassion for others, and you start to feel connection to things. I think it's like you need it, and you can't always get it in one tidal wave. Sometimes it's nice when it comes in little pieces over time, you know, because I think goodness itself can actually be something that like causes an ego to shriek or shrivel up, or you know, let's just tell some rude jokes about each other. You know, screw this. This is, you know,
Yeah.
too lovey dovey for me.
Uh-huh.
You know, I try to be aware of that a little bit. I try to sometimes.
I think James, what you were mentioning earlier, this reminds me of what you were mentioning earlier, which is like, that surrender, that letting go. Like, what is that exactly? Why is it so challenging for people? And I believe a big part of that, and at least in my own experience, it's a sense of familiarity. It's what we know, right? We've been surrounded by other people in a similar headspace. We have been so familiar with our own trauma. We are so familiar with this headspace that we've developed that letting that go is almost like saying goodbye to an old part of ourselves, and a part of us kind of, I guess, passing on, kind of dying. I've worked with someone where she was like, I don't want to say goodbye to that side of me just yet. And that's why people hold on to a lot of their own trauma, their own suffering. It gives them a sense of, oddly, comfort, because it's what they're familiar with. And the unfamiliar can seem very scary to them. And I know it really was for me. It wasn't like I took ayahuasca, switch, I'm good. The journey continued. I'm still on it, actually, and it's been about like 2.5 years. There's still waves and phases that I go through where all of a sudden I have to shed many parts of myself and grow into something totally different. And that was very scary in the beginning, super jarring, very scary. Now I'd like to believe, very good at surrendering to the process, that whatever I'm letting go of, I'm simply allowing space for something new and something more serving of me to come into my life. So yeah, I just wanted to add that little bit of like why people seem to have struggle with the concept of
Such a
surrender.
good point. Yeah. It's such a stinking good point, and it makes all the it makes sense all of a sudden when you like. I don't know if you know who Yam is, Yam Socks or whatever, but he said something about waking people up with tea and gently rather than shaking people awake. I'm guilty of being aggressive sometimes about my approach. But all of a sudden, it makes all the sense in the world. These people that are like really far along on a journey, that have essentially dedicated their life to consciousness work, and their gentle approach to it, man, because it is like sometimes saying goodbye to an old friend, you know? Like letting go of substance abuse can be like that. Letting go of, just different circumstances that have turned into a home for you. You said it so right. Mm-hmm. And I'm just, what's the most humane way of doing it? You know, what does it have to be a crazy experience in the jungle, or can it be over time, you know? Yeah. Just with consciousness.
It could probably be both.
Yeah.
I think we've done a good job of kind of like identifying some of these issues here. But part of what I'm fascinated with is like, now, once you've identified, like, how can we use this to kind of like change social structure and make it so this doesn't become something that has to get dealt with in,
so
in your
dramatically.
20s, 30s, and 40s.
Yeah.
How do we like, what do you think is like a good thing we could start doing at like a much younger age? Like, so that, because like mental health is an epidemic right now, man.
Yep.
Like there's so many people who are struggling, especially young people who've gone through it now. You're on the other side of this thing. Mm-hmm. Like, what can we do to change this like projection so, we can help raise healthy children and adults?
Absolutely. Honestly, it's in the education. Our education is, it hasn't evolved in a very, very long time. And it doesn't make sense for us to be learning so much at least in my education system. I learned a lot about arithmetics, writing, history, even at grade school level. But that's a little too early in my eyes. Yeah. Like, I haven't even learned how to listen to my body. And you want me to listen to an adult speak? Doesn't make sense.
That stuff gets steamrolled over in the play yard. It's like, hey, I don't have time to address that you guys are all essentially like a Lord of the Flies situation fighting for status. I don't have time to do that. Just learn your math while you're also, trying to decide if anyone loves you or not. Like, yeah, I totally agree. Sorry to jump in, but I have a passion. I have a bleeding heart for it because both our kids are in school.
Yeah.
And it brings back all the same trauma that I remember when I was in school. Like, school can be like the prison yard sometimes, man.
Yes.
Like, it can be vicious. It can be, everybody's like, oh, you're poor. You're, all this stuff goes on at school that is brutal, but it's illegal not to send your kids to school. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I throw it out every now and then. Like, you guys want to be homeschooled? And they're like, no. But nevertheless, they still... I think every kid at some point is going to have some struggles in school, and I'm totally on board for a little bit of reform there, in the way you're saying. Sorry, continue.
Oh no, it's totally good. I'm a fan of passion, so whenever someone jumps in, it's clear to see the passion. I love it, so you don't ever have to apologize for that. It doesn't make sense to be learning about all these like facts or arithmetics before we've learned how to really develop a relationship, for example, with ourselves. How do we actually direct and sustain our attention on one thing for a prolonged period of time? A key element for that is interest. If we don't have interest in that thing, it's hard. We're just going to hammer them to focus. It literally feels like prison for a lot of kids. My favorite part of school were my friends. And this is repeated over and over with people I come in contact with. It's never like, oh my God, I love math class. Some people really do, but like most of it is like, oh, the friends I made were awesome. And it just goes to show like it's severely under evolved, our education system. We haven't learned how to be in this body. We haven't learned what it means to be a part of a community. We haven't learned what it means to even be human. And yet we're just stuffing all these facts and all these things into our minds. I do believe, facts and education, all that stuff is very important, but it's all about timing. It doesn't make sense to do that early.
Meet kids where they're at too. I wish there was a giant aspect of it that was like, because some people excel in one area and suck in another, like you could have one kid that's like, listen, I'm bored to tears with the math. Just to occupy my time, I torment the kids around me because I'm like an evil genius now because you've done this all wrong. It's like one kid might excel in empathy and, but to meet people where they're at, to help them progress in an environment that's fair. You don't put two people that don't match up together in the ring to fight. And, And I think that could be useful too, is meeting people where they're at.
Oh, absolutely.
In that way.
The good thing is there are alternatives now, like the School of Montessori. People are exploring alternative education that does honor what we're talking about right now. So I don't want to paint this picture to the audience that like this is all there is out there. There's so many different alternatives that is worth exploring, because the beauty of what we're going through right now is at least we know what doesn't work. It's sort of like a sculptor. They get rid of all the stuff that isn't the thing they're trying to create. All right, that doesn't work, until eventually you get to the thing that we were trying to create. And I think at the end of the day, we're just trying to create a big, happy human family, right? There's no more division of you're this color, I'm that color, you're poor, I'm rich. Just so much division everywhere. We just get rid of all that. Hey, we're all just human at the end of the day. Yeah. And we can all have a great time together, not against each other. So I'm very confident, and I'm also very optimistic, hopeful of where things are going. I think a lot of the old structures currently are being shaken up, and people are starting to see very clearly what's wrong, what doesn't work anymore. A lot of the chaos that I do observe going on in this world, I see it as part of a process of people kind of waking up and then seeing what's wrong with the structure. And so that something new can arise from the ashes. So, yeah.
Great. Totally agree. I'm curious about some of the tools you use for your clients, the people that you help out.
Yeah.
With some of the struggles that we've previously discussed, maybe we could go over maybe a couple of tools that you help people with.
Absolutely. Yeah, here's a very common one. So anxiety, for example, right? I get a lot of people experiencing some form of anxiety. It's a lot of these tools, it starts with a reframe of what's actually happening. So when people say, I'm anxious, I have anxiety, it's a misfocusing. What they're whenever I go to like a social event or a party and someone goes like, yeah, I have anxiety, what I'm really hearing them say is, I'm afraid, I'm scared. Right? We peel back the layer of this word anxiety, this anxiousness, the most visceral and primal thing underneath it is fear. And then the natural question becomes, well, what is it that you're afraid of? And if it's in a social setting, people maybe don't want to make a mistake, look like a fool. I'm afraid of speaking in public. We go a step deeper and it's like, well, what is that fear truly about? And then you can get to a point where it's like, oh, I'm afraid of being laughed at because I'm afraid of not being welcome. I'm afraid of not being accepted. Ah, that's what it is. And then we go a step deeper to realize that what if I don't derive my sense of acceptance from something outside of myself? What if I accept myself? Then whether other people accept me doesn't even matter anymore. And so you see, like when people, the current perspective on anxiety is kind of missing the point. It becomes just this word that people have a difficult time even deciphering or decoding. But really, it's just another label that has been attached onto fear. We feel fear. Um, and now once that reframe happens, then the tools come in. When we feel fear, most of the time we feel unsafe, right? That's what it comes down to. Um, and these fears many times are imagined fears. I'm imagining them not accepting me. I'm imagining them laughing at me. I'm imagining them judging me. And that brings me so much fear. They're not fear based on the present moment. They're not fear based on reality. They are imagined fears. So then the tool becomes, okay, let me match my physical state with what is actually happening. What's actually happening is I'm safe. I'm not in danger. There's nothing to be afraid. So let me soothe myself. I'm scared right now, but let me soothe myself. Like when a child is scared, you soothe them. You kind of put your hand gently on them and you rub that anxiety away until, whew, I feel safe now. I'm good. All right. Now I'm back at the party. Now I can have a good time. Now I can vibe. And so that is just an example of something that I do help my clients with when it comes to their anxiety, reframing their anxiety to see what's really going on underneath the hood, and then equipping them with these very simple breathing exercises or like self-soothing tools to help ease away the anxiety and help them feel safe again.
How about
Amazing.
like life structure? This has got to be a big one for Westerners, people who, you know, burn the candle at both ends,
Yeah.
trying to do, you know, guilty as charged, you know,
Uh-huh.
for, you know, trying to like, you know, pay bills and, you know, follow your dreams and take care of your kids and, you know,
Yeah.
make sure you're doing this and that and this,
Yeah.
right? What do you suggest for that type of scenario?
When you say, and we're touching on life structures, is what you're saying?
Yeah, life structure, like maybe life balance.
Yeah. 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 Um, so when it comes to that type of stuff, the first thing that I like to help people reframe, again, and I always like starting with a reframe, is I like to pay attention to people's language when they talk about the things that they are meant to do throughout their day. So if you got bills, or if you got, you got to take care of your kids in some other capacity, or take care of yourself, grooming, whatever it may be, a lot of people tend to say like, I need to do this, I have to do this, I just, and it takes away, it gives them illusion as if they don't have a choice in the matter. But we all have a choice in the matter. We can neglect all these things and let everything kind of fall by the wayside, but we're choosing not to, because that's what that's what we want. That's what we are seeking in this life. We're not trying to just let everything fall, because if you have children, you love your kid. So the reframe first step is to help them see that we have a choice. I don't need to do this. I choose to do this. I am honored to do this. Because this gives me so much. It gives me the joy of my child. This gives me the joy of being in a healthy body when I exercise. So once that reframe happens, and to help us realize that we are in control of these aspects of our life, then we can create the structure. Now, how I like to create structure with people is I follow energy a lot. So I'll give you an example, my personal example. When I wake up in the morning, I I realize that I like to take care of all of my like communication, emails, and relationship related stuff in the morning. I just learned that naturally about myself that that's when it makes sense to do all of that stuff. And then more of the physical errands that I have to do comes in more midday. And then some of the more creative avenues that I get to explore comes closer to the evening. So my suggestion is to really, sit with yourself. What comes up naturally when it comes to your energy? What are you having more of a creative energy closer in the morning or closer at night? Are you having more of a physical boost in the morning or at night? And then it makes sense to create a structure that honors your natural energy pattern. It doesn't make sense for everybody to have a one size fit all structure because we're so different, right? Our path to healing is so different. So it doesn't make sense that our structure is going to be a one size fit all situation. So yeah, I'm trying to offer as much as I can without knowing too much about your situation.
It's funny. Like I've been trying to imagine if somebody was like, look, you can think of things in a way where you get so philosophical, you trace them all the way down to like just paradox for everything. But if somebody was like, wanted a linear way to sort of scale out progression in life, I hope everybody's okay with me just saying my own thoughts.
Yeah, no, goodness.
Is I would think of it like, okay, needs are needs, right? Like it is possible that somebody be like, I'm literally hungry. I don't have a hole in my psyche where God needs to fit. I've got a food size hole in my stomach. I need food. And I think that once that's been met, like once your basic needs have sort of been met, then we can get sort of a little more serious about a lot of the stuff we've been talking about here. But I think it's to get to there, which all of a sudden becomes as you move along, all of a sudden when you're at the top of Everest, it's like, okay, let's go back down and help everybody get where we're at so that we can enrich culture. But assuming that your needs have met, you've got everything sort of organized, all of a sudden these questions about what is love? What am I here for? What's God? Why am I anxious in Shangri-La? Why am I still anxious even when I'm in a mansion? I feel like a next step for like just a basic thing is like, well, and you're questioning, what should I do with my time? Should I accumulate more mansions? Should I accumulate, more promotion? What do I got to do here? And to me, I've been toying with this idea that maybe good advice for somebody at that point is, well, what is best? What life choice makes it most possible for you to behave consciously and in love? Like, what could you do? What kind of life could you set up, guy who's got his needs met and doesn't have to worry about food? What kind of life could you set up for yourself that allows you to operate in love optimally? And I think the answer would still be different. I think there would be some person that's like, I'm a competitive boxer. And when I'm at the top of my game, I'm generous, like genuinely generous. I'm calm as a cucumber. And I think for somebody else, the answer might be like, this guy can't handle anything. This guy needs to do almost nothing. And when you don't bombard him with society standards, all of a sudden he's feeding the homeless on his spare time. He's constructing ways of being of more value to people. He projects love and he's a more conscious individual. I think it's tailor-made to each of us, Like I do think each of our journeys are different, but I've been toying with that. What do y'all think of that generally?
Well, I see. I think what you're saying makes sense. It would seem logical. We're so different. We all handle life different. Why wouldn't the solution be, diverse, right?
But if you approach whatever it is you're doing with the attitude of what's going to be, what lifestyle, what way of being allows me to actually be optimally considerate of others.
Yeah.
Structuring my life here, how could I structure it so I'm most considerate of everybody and most able to be conscious, and then you start noticing the things that you do that lead you into unconsciousness. And, all of a sudden just like, I didn't even realize all day I've been feeling anxious and irritated, versus something that allows you to be a little more in touch with how you actually feel and think, and that could either be an adding of things or that could be a subtracting of things from your life.
you know?
Yeah, that actually reminds me of a DMT experience that I've gone through.
Cool. We want to hear it. We want to
Here
hear
we go.
Yeah, this was before ayahuasca, and like I was very lost. I just wanted to know the meaning of life. I was like, I can't make a single decision on my life moving forward until I figure this out. Because how can I make any choice if I don't know what it's meant to lead to? So I took DMT, and then immediately I got transported to like another realm. A bunch of entities were just hanging out, kind of shooting the shit, having a good time. Uh, Very like jokester, trickster type vibes, and they're very happy to see me. Like, oh, snap it, Z, what's up, man? Like, just having a really good time. And then I was like, hey, I don't have a lot of time, guys. I'm here to find out about the meaning of life. It's a very, yeah, like literally just like that,
Yeah.
because DMT is a very short experience, like 5 to 10 minutes. So I was like, I don't have a lot of time, guys. Tell me what's up. And when I said that to them, it was like I said the most hilarious thing possible. They just started laughing their ass off. And the I guess the leader, the main guy, he just gave this look that was like, oh, this guy wants to know. He wants to know, guys. And it's so obvious he was fucking with me. He wasn't hiding the fact that he was fucking with me. So then it would be, and then he just like took a random box in the air. It didn't even look like a special box. It would be as if I just went like this. Okay? Now wrote meaning of life on here. And he's like, ooh, you're looking for this, right? It's right here. Don't lose track of it. It's right here. And then he'll pass it off to another friend. And then that friend will be like, ooh, you see this? This is the meaning of life. It's right here. And they're having a gas, just laughing as if I had the meaning of life written on my shirt that I had on. But I was asking everybody else, what is the meaning of life?
Yeah.
I didn't realize how accurate that was until the end. But essentially, I got mad. I was like, hey, I'm here to find the meaning of life, guys. Like, why is this so funny to you guys? I got pissed off. And then the main guy got very firm, not necessarily aggressive, just firm. He's like, hey, this is how we're teaching you. You're here looking for something. We're giving it to you. This is just our way of giving it to you. And then I apologized. I'm like, okay, my bad. Sorry. I chilled out. And then it felt natural to kind of just even internally close my mind's eye and just start meditating. And then they were like, there you go. Now you're getting it. And what I realized was that like, it absolutely makes no sense to ask someone outside of myself what the meaning of life is. I created myself. It literally, it was hilarious because it was in me. And I was looking everywhere. I was looking in the wrong direction for the meaning of life. I were meant to look inward, discover what it is, and then express that, live a life that showed, this life that he has lived, that's his meaning of life. This life that this other person have lived, that's their meaning of life. Everyone has their own thing. And that's, to me, is profoundly beautiful, much more beautiful than there's just one singular meaning of life that everyone must follow, you know? So that's what I discovered from that experience. And it gave me so much liberation. I think for some people that might be a little disappointing because
it's amazing the ways in which liberation comes. Like I've talked about this before, a dream I had where I met this reclining guru in a dream. And I went to him and I fell at his feet and I was like, I feel like I live to make other people feel better about themselves. Like I'm so crappy and pathetic that it makes other people happier about their position in life. And his answer was like, yeah, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
like a mixture of so what and yeah and all these things. And I was like, what? Like you're supposed to like comfort me or something, you know? And I think I find it so funny. Like even your ayahuasca story, which I encourage everybody to go check out his channel because it's gold over there. When the hard lesson came on, it was like this archetypal switch between the female mother that was comforting you, and then all of a sudden a male figure came in. Not trying to say a whole bunch about gender issues. I just find it fascinating that a male entity came in, and that's when things got rough and sort of serious. If I'm remembering that right.
I gotta ask you with all these experiences and with talking to entities and going through what you've gone through, from the more the supernatural spiritual side of things, have you been able to kind of like put together for yourself how you think the construction of reality is like working at all? Or like, do you have any concepts or ideas in your mind about what you think is actually happening here? Good question.
Ooh, that's a great question. I I feel like there's certain mechanisms in this game that I've grown a little privy to, but when it comes to zooming out outside of the game and realize what this is truly about, that I'm still hmm, allowing space to be surprised. And
Yeah.
yeah, so I guess the mechanism that I've become a bit more privy to is there's really two things. One of them, I actually learned this during my kind of psychotic mental state that I was in when I took ayahuasca. One of the messages that came through is that we're everything around us, we're living in a hall of mirrors, right? It's so if we see horrible things or we see so many things that we don't really like, you don't really go around changing the mirror all around you. You go around changing the thing that's being reflected in the mirror. And that was so ridiculously simple that I denied it when they delivered that message. Like, no, come on, we're living in a hall of mirrors, guys. Come on, is that really it? And they were like, yeah, it's really simple. You've just made life way more complex than you think. It's a mirror, guys. And and I took that message eventually to heart, and it started to really change my life once I focused everything inward. It's nothing external; it's all inward. External is just the reflection of what's inside. Um, and then the second component, which was this was like a very clear message that came through during a DMT trip that I started putting into practice to see if it's any validity, because I'm not just going to believe it for the sake of believing it. And that message is thoughts precede reality. Thoughts precede reality. Our thoughts are incredibly creative, and it plays a big role in creating the experience that we have all around us. So it's like sometimes I go online and I see people with comments where it's just like, this is why you can't trust women or whatever. Just like super extreme ideas like that. And it's thoughts like that that self-perpetuates their own experience of not being able to trust women. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Um, and if someone comes in to deny that and say, no, not like that, they can't, it's hard for them to accept it because their experience tells them so. But they don't realize it's like the chicken and the egg. Which one came first, the experience or the belief? Right. And in my experience, the belief came first. And it might be a circular type thing, but the point is we can change our thoughts in order to change our experience. We can change our internal to change our external. And these are the two mechanisms that I was really able to get privy of, gain knowledge of, start practicing to see whether it lines up with my experience and turn out to be true for me. And again, when it comes to zooming outside of the game, outside of the mechanism, that I am still allowing myself to be surprised. It would be cool if when I pass on, that's when everything gets revealed and it's just like a huge surprise. That would be so cool. So that's where I'm currently at.
We'll look at the highlight reel from heaven and be like, remember that? We were talking to each other.
Yeah, that'd be so
I love
cool.
that Hall of Mirrors thing. Sometimes I wish there were people that you could, I'm wondering if you ever encounter somebody that's in pain that you're like, I wish I could just put the thing that would help you into you so that you would not be in pain anymore, like this idea of, because there's so much to that idea of the Hall of Mirrors thing, that really you're looking at something that reflects you and how much you could learn by actually studying the mirrors a little closer. This is what's going on inside of me, It's just, it works on many levels and it's very brilliant. I think that's fantastic. I want to say thanks, Z, for coming on the show and sharing all these great stories, your insights, the tools. This was awesome. Yeah. Maybe a good place to end this would be to share with our audience where they can find you, what you got going on, and let them know anything they need to hear.
Absolutely. Well, firstly, thank you, Justin James, so much for allowing me to come onto your podcast, for being so welcoming, for being so curious. I felt very, very much seen. I felt very much heard, very much accepted. So thank you so much for creating and hosting this type of space. As for how people can see some more of my work, get in contact, should they wish to do so, my website is Moments. That's Moments with an S, Moments with Z. Z is just the letter. And from there, you can check out ways that potentially, if you're interested in working together and helping yourself do some of these type of inner works, you can totally book a time with me. YouTube channel is again Moments with Z, same spelling. That's where I uploaded my ayahuasca experience. That till this day, it's been about 2.5 years. I still get comments about people saying how much it has helped them. So definitely recommend checking that one out. And I'm quite active on Instagram. Again, Moments with Z, but this one is spelled ZHI. That's the Chinese spelling of my name. And yeah, I post shorts, free resources put out there to shed some more light into this world. So yeah, I think that's about everything. Yes, actually, one last thing is I'm also on this platform called Sharewell. They offer peer support, because sometimes therapy could be a bit, out of people's budget. And this is a peer support platform where we just have a nice, welcoming space to talk about our struggles and be heard. And they just go by a subscription model. It's very affordable. So I just want to put that out there. And yeah, that's all the ways that you can reach me and see the work that I put out.
Well, that's great. I hope everybody comes and checks out his stuff. We'll leave the links in the description box where you guys can go find Z. Thanks again so much for coming on the show. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Stay blessed.